Most raised bed gardens fail, not because you're doing everything wrong, but it's because nobody tells you the 10 rules that actually matter. And if one of these mistakes is happening in your garden right now, your harvest is already in trouble. I made every single one of them. The wrong soil, the wrong depth, the wrong spacing, wrong location, you name it, and I messed it up. But once I fixed these 10 things, my garden finally exploded with growth. So let's skip the years of frustration. These are 10 raised bed mistakes that quietly wreck your garden and how to avoid them starting today. Alright, so let's kick things off with the very first mistake, the one that doomed my garden before I even planted a single seed, and that's location. I plopped my first garden bed in the spot that was easy for me to get to, but it was just awful for my plants. It was too shady and way too far from the hose. The sun-loving tomatoes grew really long and skinny, and I started to dread lugging that heavy watering can or that water hose all the way across the yard every single day. So choosing the right spot is a non-negotiable decision. Most vegetables need at least 6 to 8 hours of direct sunlight every single day to really be happy. So before you build a single thing, just hang out in your yard for a day. Watch where that sun actually goes and for how long it stays there. And please don't forget about the water. Making it a pain to get water to your garden, that actually means you're less likely to do it. Finding a sunny, level spot that is easy to get to, and you'll give your garden a head start that it deserves. So my next blunder was a classic rookie move. I built my raised bed way too wide. I thought, hey, the bigger the better, right? I made it about 5 foot across. The problem was I couldn't reach the middle without actually having to step inside that bed. Every time I did that, I was actually squishing all the soil down, which is a terrible idea for plant roots and drainage. Not to mention, it turned weeding and harvesting into a back-breaking nightmare. A simple rule to live by is never make your bed so wide that you have to actually step into it. If you can get to it from both sides, 4 foot is the absolute maximum width. If you're up against a wall or a fence, stick to about 2.5, maybe 3 foot tops. This tiny mistake makes gardening way more enjoyable. So in my brilliant attempt to save a few dollars on my first raised bed garden, I also made the beds a little bit too shallow. Using single boards that were only about 6 inches tall, I learned the hard way that most vegetable roots want about 1 foot of good soil to stretch out in. With those shallow beds, my carrots came up really short and stubby, and my tomato plants just always seemed so stressed out. The shallow soil also meant that those tough weeds from the ground below had no problem popping right up into my garden. You really need a bed that's at least 10 inches deep. Honestly, 12 inches is actually the sweet spot for happy roots. And hey, taller beds like 24 or 36 inches can be incredible back savers since you barely even have to bend over at all. Don't skimp on the depth. It's the foundation for everything. Okay, really lean in for this one. If you remember one thing from this whole video, let it be this. Do not, under any circumstances, cheap out on your soil. This was, without a doubt, the biggest reason for my first raised bed garden fail and why it failed so miserably. I figured dirt is dirt, right? I filled my brand new bed with heavy, dense clay soil straight from the yard. It was a catastrophe. The soil turned into a solid brick. Water wouldn't even drain, and my poor plants basically just starved. Garden soil is too dense for raised beds, and potting soils drain way too fast. You need a special blend. A fantastic proven mix is roughly 40% topsoil for body, 40% compost for nutrients, and about 20% something for drainage. You can actually find these pre-made bags for raised beds, or you can mix your own. I like to mix my own myself. Whatever you do, invest in good soil. It's probably the single most important part of a great raised bed. So picture this, I've got my new raised beds filled to the brim with that perfect fluffy soil mix. I'm feeling great, Then about a month later, I walk outside and the soil level has dropped maybe 3 or 4 inches. I was actually shocked. This is just the soil settling. It happens every single time. As all that good organic matter in that compost starts to break down, the soil compacts and the volume actually shrinks. That drop in the soil level can cast a shadow on those little seedlings trying to get that sun along the edges. So here's the trick. When you first fill your beds, fill them all the way to the top. Maybe even mound them up just a little bit. Just plan on topping them off with a fresh inch or 2 of compost at the start of every new season. This replaces what was lost and recharges the soil with nutrients for the year ahead. Okay, we're at the halfway point. If these tips are actually hitting home and you're ready to avoid these mistakes, I'd be so grateful if you'd hit that subscribe button. It is a huge help to me and my channel. And I've got a question for you. What's the biggest single struggle that you've had with your raised bed gardening? Drop it down in the comments below. I love reading every single one of them. So in my wild enthusiasm for a giant harvest, I committed the cardinal sin of overcrowding. I just crammed those little seedlings in there, thinking more plants equal more food. Nope, the reality was the exact opposite. By planting everything cheek to cheek, I created a thick jungle where nothing actually had a chance. The plants were all fighting each other for sunlight, for water, for nutrients. That crazy competition leads to stunted, unhealthy, unhappy plants, and ironically, a way smaller harvest. It also cuts off the airflow, which is an open invitation for fungal diseases. The solution is simple. Learn about proper spacing. The square foot gardening method is a brilliant system, and it shows you exactly how many of each plant can fit into 1 square foot. Just remember to plan for the plant's mature size, not that tiny seedling you're starting with. Raised beds drain so much faster than regular in-ground garden. That is a good thing for preventing root rot, but it also means they dry out super fast, especially in sunny, hot days. My first year of doing raised beds, I thought I'd just water by hand whenever I thought they looked thirsty. Well, this was a terrible plan. I was totally innocent. One day it was too much water, the next it wasn't enough, and my plants were constantly stressed. So it actually turned what should be a peaceful garden task into a daily source of anxiety. It was a chore. So before you plant anything, figure out your irrigation system. So the absolute best, most life-changing solution for raised beds is the drip irrigation system. It waters the plants slowly, right at the roots, which is incredibly efficient and saves a ton of time. If your drip isn't in the cards for you, at least make sure your beds are close to a watering hose or a source of water. That way it makes it easy as possible and you're less likely not to water. You know, for the longest time, I thought mulch was just for looks, something to make the garden look nice and tidy. I was wrong. Leaving the soil bare was another huge mistake. That hot sun would bake the top layer into a hard crust, and weeds would seem to pop up overnight. Mulch is your soil's best friend. A simple 2 to 3 inch layer of organic mulch, like straw, shredded leaves, or even wood chips, is a powerhouse. It helps the soil hold on to that moisture so you water less often. And it keeps the soil temperature even, protecting those roots from that scorching summer heat. And my personal favorite, it dramatically cuts down on the weeds. This is one of the easiest things you can do to make your garden life so much simpler. For my first couple of seasons, I was only using that flat horizontal space in my beds. Adding a few simple trellises, cages, or even an archway can massively increase your growing area without taking up another square inch of your yard. Vining crops like cucumbers, pole beans, peas, even small types of squash and melons absolutely love to climb. Not only does this maximize your space, it also gets those leaves up off the ground and improves that air circulation. And that air circulation is going to cut down on disease. Plus, let's be honest, harvesting beans or cucumbers at eye level That is way better than hunting for them on the dirt. So we finally reached number 10. To save a buck on my first build, I used the cheapest, thinnest wood I could find. 1 inch thick, untreated pine boards. It seemed smart at the time, but by the end of season 2, the boards were already bowing from all that soil's weight and they started to rot. Now materials like cedar are fantastic because they naturally have that rot resistance and they can last for ages. But they can also be very, very pricey. If you do use cheaper wood like pine, go for a thicker 2-inch board for way more strength and durability. You can also make less durable wood last longer with a non-toxic, plant-safe wood sealer. And a quick word of caution, be very careful about using free materials like old railroad ties or certain types of pallets. These can actually be treated with nasty chemicals like arsenic. Then you definitely do not want that leaching into the soil that you grow your food in. A little extra investments in a safe, quality material up front can save you a headache of rebuilding everything in just a couple of years. So there you are, the 10 biggest lessons that completely changed my raised bed gardening game. My journey started with a lot of frustration and some very sad looking plants. But by learning from those blunders, I was able to finally build the productive, beautiful garden that I always wanted. Start with amazing soil, give your plants enough space in properly size and properly depth, and be consistent with your watering. If you can get just those 3 things right, you're well on your way to an incredible harvest. Remember, gardening is a journey, and making mistakes is just part of how we learn. And hopefully, by sharing this biggest mistakes that I've made, I can help you skip some of those early season heartaches. Don't forget to like and share this video with fellow gardener. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Hit that bell notification so you're notified the next time that I put a video out. And like always, keep it growing.